So tonight we're going to talk about returning power to the people in every precinct and parish. And we're going to talk about election corruption or the problem and also offer a solution. So what we're going to see is systemic election corruption in Louisiana, and we think this is evidence that demands a verdict. And so the evidence that we're building, we have already brought some of it to law enforcement, and we'll be bringing more in the days to come. So what will you see? You'll see physical evidence of probable identity theft and illegal votes cast, analytical evidence from nationally recognized experts that establishes probable cause for systemic election corruption across the state. And this is new. You'll see from the Landry-Schmidt case evidence of the censorship enterprise among federal, state, and local election officials conspiring with big tech, partisan nonprofits, and universities to censor citizens concerned about election integrity. Foreign infiltration of our electronic election systems in multiple states. That's the Connect case. Who's familiar with the Connect case? If you're not familiar with it, you should look it up. Software algorithm control systems, unexplainable registration numbers and trends, numerous violations of our election law, and supporting evidence from other state groups. I'm going to skip that. Here's the cover page for the Missouri and Louisiana versus Joe Biden. And there are 4 dozen individuals named in this case, in addition to the agencies like the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, and the Election Assistance Commission, or EAC. So those are the entities we're concerned about. But this case goes into COVID, vaccines, etc. It's an expansive case. So what have we learned so far from this case? So this is the second amended complaint filed on October 6th of this year. This amended complaint contains discovery, that is documentation, and now we're getting depositions of these officials. Tony Fauci, how many of you saw that he was deposed last week? Everybody saw that? Let's give a cheer to Jeff Landry. I don't recall. I don't recall. 170 something times. I don't recall. Okay, this is supposed to be the smartest guy in the room. Yeah. Discovery has revealed a vast, complex conspiracy between federal, state, and local election officials and partisan third parties, including universities and nonprofits and big tech, to censor free speech and violate our constitutional rights. I'm not a lawyer, but I did sleep on a Norwegian cruise line ship all last week for 7 days out of New Orleans. But my friends, it sounds like treason to me. Sounds like treason. So our government has turned against us. Not everybody, because there are many good folks in government. But at the highest levels, we should all be concerned about this. The documents reveal clear and compelling evidence that the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, and the EAC, and this is critical, which regulate and certify our voting equipment, our electronic systems, colluded with state and local officials to censor election integrity speech. Louisiana state and local officials with membership only access to file complaints against citizens include the Secretary of State, the clerks of court of Calcasieu, Caldwell, Jefferson, Lafourche, and St. Tammany, and the registrars of voters of East Baton Rouge and St. Mary. And let that sink in. So what does this mean? This portal, and let me be clear, what we know so far is that these officials have applied for and received membership in the complaint portal, which I'm going to go into in a minute, which gives them access to file complaints against folks like us. Point number one. Point number two, we do not know yet whether they in fact have filed complaints against anybody. Okay, so I'm not accusing these folks of doing anything other than what's factually disclosed, which is they're members in this entity, which I'll talk about in a minute. What we do know from discovery and from the Twitter files is, and I'll give you an example. Anybody heard of Maricopa, Arizona?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody heard of Katie Hobbs?
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Hobbs filed complaints prior to this election, 2022, against her own citizens, censoring them for saying things about elections. Stephen Richter, who's the head of elections in Maricopa, also filed complaints against his own citizens. These are the people who are running the elections in Maricopa County. It's no wonder that the machines didn't work on election day. So that's what we're talking about here. This strikes at the core of our freedoms to speak and to vote and not be harassed by anybody. This is an example from Massachusetts. This is the work of a former Senate candidate in Massachusetts, who's this guy down here, Dr. Shiva Ayurveda. Shiva was censored in the 2020 prior to the 2020 election. They took him down and he lost that race. So these are government officials, Department of Homeland Security, CISA, Government Coordinating Council. But what I want to draw your attention to is the NAS, the National Association of Secretaries of State, of which our secretary is a member and an officer in that group, and the National Association of State Election Directors, of which our election director, Sherry Hatsky, is a member. Notice that they're in the center of this criminal censorship enterprise. You see that? So, over here, you see Dominion Voting Systems. Have you heard of them? Yeah. Dominion Voting Systems is part of the Government Coordinating Council for this election industry, election cabal. And here is the Center for Internet Security and the Election Infrastructure Group. That's a nonprofit, and I'll get into that in just a minute. So, this slide has just been prepared, so it's really, I'm not sure you can even read it from back there, but I'm going to go through it because it's critical. And it's a draft. You get some water, my throat's getting dry. So, did you know that on January 6, 2017, two gentlemen named Obama and Biden declared election systems critical infrastructure? January 6, 2017. President Trump was inaugurated a couple weeks after that. So what that means is that election systems are now regulated by CISA of the Department of Homeland Security, and they're certified through the Election Assistance Commission. Now, the Jeff Landry lawsuit has identified those agencies as being at the center of the censorship enterprise, the criminal cabal. So I ask you this question: does it make sense to use equipment that's certified and regulated by government agencies who are censoring us? Makes no sense. So what that has led to, is these groups outsourced to the Center for Internet Security, CIS, who created EISEC, the Election Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center, EISEC, whose mission it is to censor misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. Have you heard those words before? Okay. So this nonprofit created this entity, EISEC. EISEC is a membership organization in which I gave you the Secretary of State and the local officials. They are members of this organization whose mission it is to deal with misinformation, malinformation, etc. Now, Vicki, who said that what was going to happen? The shoe was going to drop or something? What was it?
Smelling salts.
Oh, you're going to need smelling salts. Anybody need some smelling salts about that? Anybody fainted back there? This is shocking, folks. It's shocking. I never thought at 65 years old, I wanted to be retired. I wanted to lead a quiet life. Come down on the bayou and fish or something. But here we are. So, our elected officials, who I just named in the previous slide, purposely joined this organization. You and I can't join it because you have to have a .gov email, they vet you, you apply for this, okay? These EISEC partnered with and created, at the direction of the Department of Homeland Security and probably the FBI, the Election Integrity Partnership, which is a consortium who set up a portal to receive complaints about citizens. This consortium is the Atlantic Council, Graphica, the University of Washington, and Stanford University. So you see what's happening here. Our government is washing by outsourcing to these guys, who outsource to these guys. You see that? So that they can claim that they're not involved. But what we know from the disclosures that have been coming out over the last few weeks is the FBI was meeting with all the big tech companies weekly prior to our elections to tell them on behalf of the administration, the Biden administration, who to censor. So in May of 2021, the Election Integrity Partnership published a public report. You can go look at it, called The Long Fuse. They give all their statistics in there. They censored 22 million posts. And I don't have the number in my head, but hundreds of individuals and organizations like the Gateway Pundit, for example. And this all leads into this frame, which is Jeff Landry and Eric Schmidt's lawsuit. All of this is documented in the lawsuit except for this piece from Louisiana. Now, what have we done? We have filed Freedom of Information requests with all of these officials to ask them for their communications with Department of Homeland Security, CISA, EAC, etc. They have been non-responsive to our other requests previously, and we expect them probably not to respond to these. What does that tell you? Of course. So don't get discouraged if we report they haven't turned anything over, because that's damning in and of itself. But we have other ways to encourage them to give us that information. You were going to say something, sir?
FOIA request.
A FOIA. Oh, sorry, Vicki. Vicki told me to find everything. Freedom of Information request or a public records request.
They were FOIA requests.
They were.
They're breaking the law.
Absolutely, but they're breaking the law. It shouldn't be. Don't be discouraged, folks. Criminal. Liars lie. That's what we're dealing with here. These people hate our Constitution, and they hate us. They hate us. That's the bottom line. These are criminals who are violating the Constitution. Let me be clear. I am not accusing Louisiana state or local election officials of being criminals, because we don't have that evidence. I am saying that guys like Elvis Chan, the FBI agent in San Francisco who had the meetings with big tech every week, I am saying that it's looking like he's a criminal and others. Now, and Vicki, just stop me if I don't define something. Just say, hey, you didn't define that. On the top line here, and let me back up. So we're doing our research right now to develop a chart like this for Louisiana. This is Massachusetts, okay? So we're working on that. This is just the preliminary draft. So on the top line here, our Secretary of State, Kyle Ardoin, was acting Secretary of State starting in May of 2018. He was appointed when Secretary Shedler resigned. He was elected in December of 2018 in a special election, and then elected in a regular election in November of 2019. Then he became an officer in NAS, the National Association of Secretaries of State. How am I doing, Vicki?
Good.
Okay. I remember. He served from 2019 to 2020. Then in August of 2020, he's president-elect of NAS to 2021. Then he is president 2021-2022. At that time, he's also the co-chair of the NAS Cybersecurity Group, Secretaries of State Group. He also is the EIS Government Coordinating Council co-chair. Let me say that again. Government Coordinating Council co-chair. What that is?
What is it?
It's that. See NAS right here? You see the election machinery people here. You see federal government people here, CISA, EAC, graphic right here, etc. These people are coordinating the criminal censorship enterprise. And he continues in that role as the Government Coordinating Council co-chair to this very day, 2022. to 2023. That should be of grave concern to every Louisiana citizen that the person who's responsible for our elections is involved in this kind of thing. And let me back up and answer any question, because I know I've dropped a lot of stuff on you. Any questions about that? Anything not clear? Yes, sir.
You know, as these elections go on, I keep hearing that some of the results are statistically impossible for that result to occur. Do you agree with that?
I'm going to show you some evidence in a minute that will confirm what you're saying. Yes, so just hold that thought. Any questions? Okay. So, we also have proof provided by True the Vote, if you know who those folks are, which is currently being investigated. Charges were filed in LA County, which uses this software, Connect, a database of 2 million roughly registered voters who were poll workers, was found on CCP controlled, Chinese Communist Party controlled servers in China, Americans, 2 million. This software is used in Los Angeles County, in Detroit. Have we heard of Detroit before? They were one of the 5 cities that stopped counting. So this case is currently under investigation in Michigan and in Los Angeles and Florida and other places. So it's an ongoing case. But what we know and what we can say is that we now have proof of Chinese Communist Party infiltration of the United States election system in multiple states. Hear me clearly. We looked into this in Louisiana, and we do not believe that Connect has ever had a contract in Louisiana. We've gone through the contract database. So we don't think it's happening here, but we're not a high-value target, if you know what I mean. If you can get Los Angeles County to use your software, you have Louisiana times 2.5 million people. Okay. So now let's get into some of the data and answer the gentleman's question. So part of what we do canvassing. We look at data electronically, but we also knock on doors. So we canvassed in Ascension Parish on August 27th of 2020. I think Lennar and Jeff, anybody else here who was in that canvass, involved in that canvass. So it was a great day for us. We digitally canvassed first, looking through the registered voter database for Ascension. And then we went out into the field. We had 55 canvassers representing 14 parishes. We did an hour and a half of training. We had 300 plus man hours in the field, and there are multiple organizations represented: Republican Women, Louisiana Sunshine, LeCag, We the People was there too. We had 32 walk books prepared by Jeff Young, and a patriot from the Northwest. Jeff works in Mike Lindell's organization out of Colorado. These walk books were geo-optimized for efficiency with QR codes that had mapping. So you scan the QR code and it said, go to this house, go to this house, go to this house. So when we talk about canvassing, we didn't just wake up on Saturday morning and say, hey, let's go knock on some doors. This is all very professional, high-level statistical analysis is done before we ever started.
Randy,
Yes.
how did you know where to go? So what
How do we know where to
data
go?
that you're using, where did it send you? What kind of housing?
So I'm going to get into what the criteria was. That's a great question. So our criteria, we use Secretary of State data, voter rolls from mid-2021. We selected for national change of address. How many people have filled out a change of address card before? So that data is publicly available. So our friends in Colorado in the Northwest, they screened the Ascension Parish database to pull out all those folks who had moved because they're likely candidates to have questionable registrations. Secondly, we looked for residences with 6, these are not apartment buildings, these are private residences with 6+ residents, because that also could be problematic.
6+ voting residents?
6+ registered voters. 6+ registered voters.
In one
Thank
house.
you. In one
apartment.
house, right. We canvassed 378 residences, over 2,000 registered voters, and the average time to complete one of the booklets, which you'll see a picture of one of the pages, was about 3 hours. The mayor of Donaldsonville was in our canvass, and he came out on his porch and shouted down the canvassers and told them what we were doing is illegal and to get out of there. So we did stir up a little bit of trouble, but they were trained just to back off and not try to get into anything. We did notify the sheriff, by the way, Bobby Weber, that we were going to be, in his parish, and John Scanlon is a resident of Ascension Parish and a notable citizen. So we were very above board. We notified everyone that we were going to be there and what we were going to do. Here's an example. This is a vacant property where the neighbor next door said nobody lives there. And our canvassers reported that the house was locked up and it looked like it had boxes stacked up in it like a storage facility, like a storage room. The neighbor said no one was there. There's 9 registered voters there. This is a picture of the walk sheet over there. You can see the QR code in the corner. And we have the name, the voter ID, we have the last election they voted in on this page, and then the notes. All of the canvassing books were notarized by an attorney who works with us. So this is evidence for possible legal action that we may take. 3 voted in 2020, 3 have never voted, 3 have not voted in at least 2 federal cycles, and 1 hasn't voted since 1996. So these are voters who are likely, some of these are likely ineligible voters that possibly should be removed from the voter rolls. What this tells us is that the registrar of voters is likely not keeping up with the voter rolls. This is a commercial mailbox facility. It's in the Ultima Plaza in Prairieville. It's a UPS store. There are 13 registered voters registered here. Now we need your help because these are very small people. And we could not find them. And we call them Cajun Caspers, like Casper the Ghost, because we know these people are around, but they're kind of ephemeral, they're just like smoke. Clearly, and 3 voted in the election, general election 2023. It's illegal to be registered as your primary registration, primary residence in one of these places. It's probably happening here in Zachary, Louisiana, north of Baton Rouge, where I live. My local UPS store has over 20 people registered there. And if you look at your UPS store here, you'll probably find the same thing. Those are highly likely to be actually ghost voters. Here's a abandoned property. You can see, wow, it has a little red dot. You can see right here, the ceiling's caved in, it's all junky, no one's there. The resident is still registered, and they voted in 2020, but they moved to East Baton Rouge Parish in March of 2020. The most egregious example of this kind of thing is we have a couple who moved to Hawaii in 2018. moved to Hawaii. And we know that some people move like across the parish and they come back and vote. That's not what we were looking for. It's doubtful that somebody who moved to Hawaii 2 years before came back to Prairieville to vote, right?
Right.
So what was the overall results? Well, in the national change of address, about half the doors were open. That means somebody opened the door and talked to our canvassers. 133 people, or 49%, were confirmed to have moved and voted from their old address. 53% moved out of parish. 11% moved out of state. If they move out of parish, they're definitely not legal to vote in that parish. And certainly if they move to Hawaii, they can't vote in Ascension Parish, but they did. The 6+ registered voters, we got again 50% of the doors open. 15% did not live at the address, 276. And if we extrapolate that to the whole registration, voter registration base, that would be 12,364 folks. There's 88,000 people registered to vote in this parish. There were 9% who were non-residents that voted in 2020, which if you extrapolate that to the whole parish, it would be 7,400. And 233 or 13% had not voted in at least 2 federal election cycles, or 10,700. That's a lot of numbers, but what's the bottom line? We estimate that about 20% of the registered voters in Ascension Parish are likely illegal or at least problematic and need to be investigated. 20%.
Wow.
20%. Now, our elected officials, what's the average
Margin.
space margin between the winner and the loser in many races?
That's 1%. 20 or less.
Less than that.
I think I read a statistic that it's in the 5% range, plus or minus. So you see the problem here? And the way that the fraud is perpetrated is you need a lot of illegally registered voters, phantom voters, in the registration rolls to pull off the machine cheat and the other things that are going on. Vicki.
So this is not people voting illegally. This is something or someone using their name to cast a vote illegally.
That's a great question. Vicki asked, this is not people voting illegally. This is somebody using their name to vote illegally. As we speak, we're developing the phone numbers for all these people, which we didn't have. The couple in Hawaii will get a phone call from one of our folks, one of our canvassers, saying they're going to get a letter first saying, we're from Ascension Parish and we're looking into voter registration. We notice you're still registered and we have record that says you voted in the 2020 election. We'll be calling you to confirm. So the Hawaii couple gets a letter, then they get a phone call in which we then make an affidavit that they say, this is what we expect. Well, I haven't lived there in 4 years. This is 2020. I haven't lived there in 3 years. And certainly I didn't vote there because I voted in Hawaii. Well, what we then know is the voter didn't cast the vote. So then the question is, how did the vote get cast? And the answer is likely in the database, because you saw the criminal conspiracy. You saw the people involved in that. We believe that the databases are being manipulated, and we have evidence from other states of that. And I'm going to get into that in a minute with what we've asked for in Louisiana and what we've been denied. So,
I have a question. My dad is recently deceased. Have y'all looked into the nursing homes and the assisted living homes? And because I think there's a lot of.
In Wisconsin, they turned up a significant problem in that area of.
Repeat the question.
The question was, have we looked into nursing homes and assisted living? The answer is, we have looked at what Wisconsin's done. We have done some analysis of a nursing home. I actually did the analysis myself in Covington called St. Anthony's Garden. That it's a memory care and nursing home facility. They have 114 registered voters. I looked at the pattern of registration dates. So it was normal, 1963, 64, 65, what you would expect. And I cut the data at January 2019, which was before the election, 2020 election. 57 of those residents of St. Anthony's Memory Care and Nursing Home registered in a normal pattern prior to 2019. 57, or half of them, jumped up at their age, 70, 80, 90, or 100, jumped up and registered to vote in 2019 up to the election in 2020. Okay?
That's one nursing home.
One nursing home. We have that on our work list to do, to look at that in a broader way, but we haven't moved beyond that. But we're suspicious, and you'll see some data in a minute that'll show by parish. I'm going to show Terrebonne and Lafourche and other parishes, where I'll get into that with some specific data. Good question. Okay, this is from our friends at Citizens for a New Louisiana. This is let me back up. We've looked at obituaries and deaths and all that. We have not seen a problem with dead people voting in any large numbers. That it looks like we're doing a pretty good job with that. This is 588 registered voters in a vacant homeless shelter on 843 Camp Street in New Orleans. And this sign says mail can be picked up at Poydras Street starting Thursday, November 4th, 2020. Nobody lives here. The doors are chained. It was chained way back in November of 2020, and these people are still registered to vote there. But we have our Secretary of State going around the state, maybe he spoke here, saying our voter rolls are 99.5% accurate, right? It's not true, folks. This is registration. This is the work of Dr. Douglas Frank, who's a PhD scientist. He's a Nobel Prize nominee in physics. And he is working with us as one of our national experts. This is the voter registration trends for all the parishes in Louisiana. And this is 2016, 2016, 2018, 2020, 2018, 2016. Yeah. Notice that all of them look exactly the same. This is number of registered voters by parish. Notice before the election, registrations go up, and then after the election, the registrations are purged and go down. Question, I'm a professor, I gotta ask the class. When should registered voters be purged from the rolls? Before or after the election?
Before.
Why are they being purged after the election?
They want
To
to
cover their tracks.
A+. This is from our analyst Susan Bairnsfather in Shreveport. She basically replicated Dr. Frank's work before she saw Dr. Frank's work. Notice these parishes, which are our largest parishes, 2016, 2019, I said 2018, I meant 2019, and 2020. What's the probability that those curves would all be exactly the same? Registrations grow before the election and they're purged after. They grow before the election, purged after, and they have the same shape. Probability?
0.
0. Here's St. Tammany and Lafayette. We put the same size parishes together so the scale would be correct. Am I making sense?
Yep.
Same shape. What's the probability that every parish would have the same shape of voter registration?
0.
Here's Livingston, Ascension, and Bossier. Same thing. So we asked for another national expert that you may have seen on, if you watch Frank's speech, or if you tuned in to the Moment of Truth Summit. Jeff O'Donnell, who we work very closely with, did some analysis for us on these camel humps, the camel humps. The incline is 7% growth. And before the 2020 election, there were almost 200,000 new registrations between June and October. The camel hump decline was only 36,000, more or less, who were purged afterwards. Okay? So, in a state with, at best, flat population growth, what would you expect voter registrations to be doing? They should be flat to declining, but look what we see. Okay? They're going up. So what did he find further? For 2020, there were almost 18,000 voters who had registration dates, wait for it, after November 3rd. These are people who voted in November of 2020 who, according to the Secretary of State, had registration dates after November 3rd. It's a little bit odd. We have 32,000 voters who have 2 voters with the same registration number. Now, let me ask y'all, how many of you have someone that you share a bank account number with who's not a family or friend in Zachary, Louisiana? Anybody sharing a bank account number? What would that indicate if you shared a bank account number with me in Zachary, Louisiana? About the bank. What would it say about the bank? They're at least sloppy. They're at least sloppy. It could be worse, right? We have 1,100 voters with 3 active voters with the same voter ID. And we have voters with 2 ID numbers, 400 plus. And we have single voter ID numbers showing voting multiple times, 200 of those in 2020. This is a picture of what we think is sloppiness, technically malfeasance, but it could be worse than that, given the slide that I showed you with all those people on it. Okay, here is some further work by Dr. Douglas Frank. And what he has done is taken every parish and he's taken the 2019 census numbers, that's the updated numbers. Remember, the 2020 census was not available yet in November of 2020. So this is the 2019 American Community Survey census update numbers. That's this blue curve. That's the number of people by age group, this is 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, up to 110. Census. The black line is active voter registrations. The red line is ballots recorded. That would be voter turnout. Okay? The gray line is all registrations. So the difference between black and gray, these are inactive registrations. These are people who may be ineligible to vote, that the registrar has coded them inactive. Okay, we believe that there should only be one category of voters, active voters. You're either active or you're not. And that's something that our new Secretary of State, when he's elected, we will propose legislation to clean up the rolls, and you can always register again, but we need to keep them clean. So why is this slide important? So we can predict, you see black is voter active registrations. This is ballots recorded or turnout. Notice that these lines, what? They're like a dance. They're like Lennar with ballroom dancing, right? Very elegant. They go up and down at the same rate. In fact, the correlation is 99.9%. Between, we can predict by voter registration numbers, voter turnout. Dr. Frank says it this way. He wears a little bow tie, if you know him. Buddy, that ain't normal. Okay? So this is a question for our Secretary of State. Why can we predict with 99% accuracy voter turnout based on voter registration numbers? Those numbers shouldn't correlate. So here's the question that was asked about the elderly. I'm now 65, so I'm in this group. Notice that between the age of 70 and 100, remember this is ballots and this is registrations. This is turnout and this registrations. Between 70 and 100, we have 90+% turnout. 90+%. Wait, what's wrong with this? And in fact, between 70 and 80, we have 100% turnout right here. See, when red touches black, that's 100% turnout. Now I know folks, in their mid-70s are, gung-ho, but 100% turnout? Really? So this is another question for our Secretary of State and our election officials. And what you're going to see is every parish has that same turnout. So what does that suggest? That something's going on with our elderly voters. And if you've never voted, if you haven't ever voted and you're elderly, or you hadn't voted in 20 or 30 or 40 years and you're elderly, who's the most likely people that the cabal would steal their identity and their vote? Because the old folks aren't going to go check to see anything. They're sick or they're busy or they got family or whatever. Okay, I skipped one. I'm going to get to that one. Hang on. I know you've been waiting for it. See, I'm trying to keep your attention, right? Because it's getting late. In fact, it's almost my bedtime. 10 minutes, okay. How can there be more registered voters than there are people? This is St. Helena Parish. Percent of population registered 105%. The black line is above the blue line. There's more people registered than there are people. And we have this in many, many parishes in certain age groups. The Secretary of State is going around the state saying our voter rolls are 99% accurate. It's not true, folks. Here's the data. Lafourche. Notice our old folks in Lafourche, they're as spry as the ones in the other parishes, right? Almost 100, not quite 100%, but 95% plus. Okay? And you see, we can predict turnout from registrations with a 99.7% accuracy. Terrebonne, 90+% turnout over here. Okay?
No way.
Lafayette Parish, same thing. Jefferson Parish, same thing. And I'm gonna skip through these. I'm gonna skip that. Okay, machines. I'm gonna switch from voter registration because I'm getting the 10-minute call now. I'm switching from voter registration system to machines. We use Dominion voting systems here. The early voting touchscreens, if you early vote, shame on you, vote on election day. But if you early vote on the machines, those same machines are used in Colorado and California. This is a cast vote record, which is the digital record of the vote, the timestamp, and the date, not the person's name or ID. It's anonymous. This is, blue is Mesa County, Colorado. Red is San Benito, California. And if you look, this is early voting over here, from here over. Colorado has a longer early voting period than California. From here over is day of. Notice that these two graphs follow each other, and they're exactly the same over here.
Wow.
What's the probability of voters showing up at the exact same time on the exact day in two different counties in two different states? As Douglas Frank would say, that ain't normal, buddy. And this is evidence of machine algorithms or manipulation, because this is impossible from normal human behavior. We would expect all kinds of zigs and zags in when people turn up. Because in one state it could have been raining, the other one not, so on and so forth. So this is these are what's called cast vote records. A cast vote record, as I said, is date and time stamped, anonymous electronic record of each ballot cast in order. It's a statistical analysis can replay the election to see if the patterns look manipulated or normal. You saw a manipulated pattern. Kyle and his staff have been uncooperative in providing cast vote records at a reasonable cost. We've been requesting them now for a year and a half. We made several national experts available to him to professionally and privately examine them. We made an offer. We said, look, we'll have the experts come in. We can look at it. If everything's fine, we'll publicly state that. If it's not, you can be the hero and come out and say, I've found that our voting machines are not quite right. We're still waiting for the cast vote records. Can you imagine why? The response to our FOIA for cast vote records for each parish sent to us by legal counsel, they asked us for $300,000 to get our own records from our own voting. Y'all got $300,000? We then reduced our request to just two parishes, EBR and Ascension, and they asked us for $8,400. This is an insult to every citizen in this room and around the state. How can it be that we have to come up with $4,000 to get access to the records from the voting machines that we pay for and that we pay for the staff salaries? How can that be? It's an insult. And my question has been, what are they hiding? Why are they hiding it? And who's instructing them to hide it? Well, I think from the chart with all the photographs on it, we're getting a picture and an answer to that. This is San Francisco, and I'll close with this. And I'll be available for questions afterwards if you want to ask me. This is the city and county of San Francisco, MAGA country. Wait, no, it's not MAGA country. That's Pelosi country, okay? This is the Department of Elections website. Now keep cast vote records in your mind, that chart of Colorado and California. Department of Elections, June 7, 2022, election results, detailed reports. This is a public website. I went on it and got this screenshot. Final report. Cast vote record. Click here. Cost, free. Ballot images. The image of every ballot. They have paper ballots. Click here. Vote by mail ballot report, conditional report, image cast central logs. These are the logs from the computer. Who logged in and out of their computer. All of it's available publicly for free. Question is, why doesn't the Secretary of State make this information available to you and me? If Louisiana citizens can get CVRs from San Francisco, why can't we get them from Kyle? So we asked Jeff O'Donnell a few weeks ago in a phone call, how many CVRs you have from around the country? Over 1,000 from 26 states and the District of Columbia. We've got CVRs from Fulton County, Georgia, Miami-Dade, Portland, San Francisco, etc. Many of these counties are making them available for free to citizens. And when our friend is elected Secretary of State, we will bring legislation forward, if we're still using machines at that time, to get these records for free. And then I lied. Can I just do one more song,
Yes, of
please?
course.
Okay. I don't want to get in trouble in Houma. I know what y'all can do to people on the Bayou. This is a critical
We don't
slide.
have time for questions and answers.
Okay, this is a critical slide. Remember that the censorship enterprise relies on the feds creating the censorship enterprise, but then outsourcing it to nonprofits. Then universities develop the software to do the censoring, and big tech implements it. So the feds, state, and local government people can say, oh, you clicked the user agreement on Facebook. You know, those things we click. And we don't have anything to do with that. Well, they've been caught. And you should be encouraged because more stuff's coming out. And we're digging in Louisiana right now on this subject. So who counts our votes and who keeps our voter registration? Who counts your votes in Louisiana? Does anybody know? Anybody want to answer that question? Who counts our votes in Louisiana?
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. Maybe. The answer is nobody in Louisiana counts your votes. Who counts your votes is who wrote the software. Who wrote the software? Do you know? No one in Louisiana wrote your software. Okay? It's proprietary. It's patented. Can't look at it. What? I use this example. My cell phone doesn't have a password on it. It's a cheap Android phone. I'm retired. There's not much going on in there except for all this election stuff. But if I told my wife, honey, you can't look at my phone because, I got all this election stuff on there and it's really sensitive, what would she think? I've been married to her 42 years, by the way.
You're hiding something.
I'm hiding something. So when people are not transparent, whether they be the Secretary of State, any election official, or me, lack of transparency says, and we all know this, you're hiding something. So, voter registration. Your registrar of voters is appointed by the parish council to register votes. But they have a conflict of interest because they run early voting, and you already saw in Ascension the voter rolls are dirty. I assure you in Terrebonne and Lafourche, they're dirty too, and all over the state. The Registrar of Voters outsources voter registration to the Secretary of State, who outsources to Civics, founded as a private company, founded as GCR in 1979. Civics was acquired by a private equity firm, HKW, of Indianapolis in 2017. Does 2017 ring a bell to you? January 6, 2017, Barack Obama declared election systems, critical infrastructure, bringing the federal government in to regulate and certify them. Got it? What is a private equity firm? It's a firm whose ownership does not have to be disclosed, who publishes no public financial statements. Is that somebody you want running your voter registration system?
No.
Civic's registration database was shared with ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center, to keep the voter rolls clean in Louisiana starting in 2014. This data was sent to these guys, and guess what? ERIC, which is a private, quote, nonprofit, was funded by the Pew Center for the States with money from George Soros. Do you know him?
Yeah.
From his Open Society Fund. Okay? Smelling salts, anyone? Election systems, the machines and the data. Now remember, this is regulated by the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, and the EAC, who are on the chart of all the cabal. The Registrar of Voters and the Clerk of Court for Election Day outsources to the Secretary of State, who outsources to Dominion Voting Systems of Denver, Colorado, but their headquarters is in Toronto, Canada, with software operations in Serbia. Okay. Would you like to run on that? Go Serbia. Go, we're for Serbia. Serbs for Louisiana. They were acquired by a private equity firm called Staple Street Capital of New York in 2018. Remember what happened January 6, 2017. Are you seeing the pattern here? The owners do not have to disclose who their owners are, who the shareholders are, or anything about their finances. This Wall Street Journal source. Dominion assigned their voting technology patents, of which there are at least 18, to the Hong Kong Shanghai Bank of UK and Canada as collateral for a large capital infusion in 2019. So the patents on this software that's inside those machines are under the control of a Hong Kong-based bank. And then in 2020, UBS Limited of Hong Kong, which is a Chinese-Swiss entity, invested $400 million in Staple Street Capital. I'll leave it to your imagination why you would think $400 million investment in a software company, in a voting system company, would be a good investment if you could take control of our great country. And then finally, you can check this out. Rebel News, if you're familiar with the investigative reporter, who's the guy? O'Keefe, those guys? Yeah, Veritas, O'Keefe and Veritas. This is the Canadian Veritas called Rebel News. They staked out Dominion's headquarters in Toronto, and on the same floor with Dominion, this is the actual screenshot of the video that they shot on location. Dominion is on the same floor as a George Soros nonprofit. This is the company that we lease voting systems from and who have access to all of our voting system technology. And then this is supporting evidence from states, New York, Wisconsin, Colorado, CISA, Tennessee, New Mexico, Georgia. These are all reports of what the gentleman asked early about manipulation and software and stuff. That's all in here. So what do we think we should do? And this, I'll quit and answer questions. Return power to the people in the precinct, decentralize elections, eliminate third-party outsourcing, voter registration and maintenance at the parish level in a simple spreadsheet or card catalog. Okay? Hand-marked secure paper ballots with technology assist, ballots tracked by unique serial number and available online for public inspection. You just saw it. It's being done in San Francisco. Eliminate early voting and mail voting except for military, disabled. Let's make Election Day great again. What they promised us is convenience. Oh, you can vote this way and that way and early and by mail. We bought it hook, line, and sinker. Convenience led to complexity and centralization. And it's the complexity and centralization that has led to the corruption. You see how complicated that cabal chart was? No one can understand that, and that's on purpose. And then get involved with your parish. Lennar made a case for that. So what have we been working on for well over a year? This is the solution. It's called the Cajun Clothesline Counting System. Okay, how's my Cajun doing? I taught at USNL back in the 80s, you know, up there in Lafayette. There are 3,100, well, what's our goal? Free, fair, accurate, transparent, auditable elections. You've heard all this software, hedge funds, and all complicated, totally complicated. So we tested a system in May, which was, if you saw Maricopa County's audit, it was around Lazy Susan. We actually talked with Colonel Sean Smith, formerly of Space Force, retired, got the procedures they used in Maricopa, talked to Sean for a couple of hours. We built those carousel counting systems, and we actually used them in May of this year. And they really didn't work for actual elections. We did a mock election in the greater Baton Rouge area. So we brainstormed and we said, rather than going around and trying to clip ballots, what if we use a production line? Because many of us worked in production industries. We know production. So we set a production line, and these principles are simple. It's production and accounting, simple accounting, adding. So this is the Cajun clothesline right here. You have a box of ballots, a secure box of ballots. You have a ballot handler, one on each end. They take clothespins, that's our hardware, okay? The clothespin attaches by the gentleman here. He puts the ballot on the line. This is a clothesline with a pulley. Everybody understand that? Anybody not understand the clothesline? Okay, now, Lennar, do we have the non-disclosure agreements for folks to sign when they leave? Because we've applied for a patent for this. We want to be just like the competition. Patented, proprietary, y'all can't look in the box, right? And we got a trademark working on Cajun clothesline too. Don't steal it. There are 3,100 precincts in Louisiana. This is really good news, y'all, that we have small precincts. We have no Maricopas in Louisiana. Be thankful. There's 1,200 voters on average in each precinct. If you have a 50% average turnout, I know presidentials are 70 plus, and the one this weekend is going to be like 30. So we just picked 50. That would mean we have to count 600 ballots. We did a time study on October 19th, 2022. We had 2 industrial engineers there, 1 CPA. We had a delegation from Florida, a delegation from Missouri. We've already sent our results to Washington State, Idaho, Texas, Florida, Missouri, Colorado, and Mike Lindell's aware of this. So we're worried that the next time you see Mike, he's going to say, we got Giza Dream Sheets, BOGO, promo code Dominion, and Cajun Clothesline, 2-for-1 deal. So if you see Mike Lindell talking about the Cajun Clothesline, that's where it came from.
He just called me earlier today. I'll let him know about that.
He called you?
He called me. I said, I have to leave a people meeting. I'll call you after.
100 ballots. We counted 100 ballots with these folks. There's 10 folks. 100 ballots in 40 minutes. Okay? I know we're down to Bayou. We have been disrespected by our election officials who say we can't count, they can't get anybody to volunteer. Folks, it's time to can convenience and reclaim our civic duty. We should run our own elections, just like we run the jury. If you want to change our parish and our state, we have to run our elections. We can't outsource to Baton Rouge. Who outsources? I won't go into that. You saw it. We test, so that means that it will take 4 hours to count an average precinct. We had a 99.75% accuracy. Out of 12 races, this was a St. Charles Parish, two-sided ballot with 12 ballot issues on it. President, senator, all that. There was a local race too. We can do this. You know how much this system costs? We got to do an RFP too, just because we want to be like the other guys. We have another version of this. This is a wooden one. We have a metal one that's made from two umbrella bases, a metal closet pole, and 2 pulleys from a clothesline, all purchased at Tractor Supply and Home Depot for under $100. Under $100. Every precinct can have this system. And we don't even need to get the money from Baton Rouge. And we certainly don't need federal grants, which is how they get their fingers into our business. And you need to tell your elected officials, no more federal grants. We want them out. We want to run elections here. And I'll really close with this. Our election officials, and we've been sensitive to them, and try to come up with a solution. They want to know that night what the numbers are. We said, okay, we'll go to work on that. So we've been working with a company who is the worldwide leader in optical character recognition, recognizing like scantrons and little bubble tests and stuff. A ballot is just a scantron. So at very low cost, in every precinct, imagine a scanner. You fill out your ballot by hand with a blue ink pen. You bring it over to the scanner. The scanner isn't hooked to anything other than a CD-ROM machine. CD-ROM machine. You know what that is? Some young folks in here may not remember that. But I came up with 78 and 33 LPs. Actually, the 78s were my parents and the 33s were mine. You scan your own ballot through the scanner. It goes into a secure box. That CD-ROM cannot be rewritten, right? At the end of the election night, every CD-ROM is taken to the clerk of court's office with the proper chain of custody, the precinct number, all that. The clerk of court has a simple CD-ROM reader with a addition tabulator on it that tabulates those results. They're unofficial until the Cajun clothesline count. So that night, the unofficial count from the CD-ROM can go to the Secretary of State and can go out to the press. We have a digital record of every ballot by precinct. Meanwhile, you could choose in your precinct to count that night or the next day because you have 10 days or so to certify. Those are the certified results. Now let me ask you this question, and I'll close with this. Who counts your votes under this system?
We do.
We do. If there's a problem with the count, who's accountable for the count? We are. Who signs off on this? We do. If there's any question, it goes back to the precinct. Do you see the mess in Maricopa? Okay, it's on purpose. It's on purpose. So, you should, when you hear the Secretary of State, he's going around the state right now, and some people are discouraged by it. Can you believe he said our voter rolls are 99% accurate? Can you believe he said it's going to take 4 or 5 days to count the votes? Has anybody heard him say that? He's not telling the truth. And it's either because he's incompetent or he's corrupt. And I've told that to his face. A year and a half ago, I started well over a year. Kyle, if you don't do the right thing, things are going to blow up either in Louisiana or outside of Louisiana. When they blow up, they're going to blow back into Louisiana, and you are going to look incompetent or corrupt. And we're here. We're here. So, thank you very much. Questions? See, I didn't show you everything, so Bo's going to invite me back maybe, and I got more data if you want it.
I actually have 2 questions
Sure.
and I have to get home with her. Number 1, at our election integrity town hall, Kyle Ordoney announced on stage that he was dismissing getting rid of Eric. What has he put in place to clean the voter rolls?
Okay, you just saw that citizens, we got the voter rolls, we got the change of address, we did all this work. We briefed
Right,
him,
so
let me answer that. We briefed Kyle personally at John Scanlon's house, at John Scanlon, my partner's kitchen table. I sat across from Kyle Ordoney. We told him everything that was going to go on with the canvas. The methodology, who we used to get all the data pulled down, how we put the walkbooks together, everything. Do you know who has never called us, asked us, or followed up with us on the methodology to canvas or the results of that canvas? Kyle Ordoney. And I was the chief executive of a very large, significant Louisiana company. And if someone had come to me and said, hey, Randy, I think you got a problem, man. And we're going to look into it, and we're going to bring you back something. A normal person who's professional would follow up. And it's very disappointing. Because we can teach you, if you want to canvass Terrebonne Parish,
We do. That's my next
just
question.
tell me. We'll get the walkbooks, we'll come train you, it'll all be totally professional.
Yeah, well, so, can I, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're wanting, as we the people.
Microphone.
As our group, we the people, we would like to canvass Lafourche and Terrebonne Parish. And that means we're going to need volunteers. And, I mean, we could do more than that. We would like to start there. So if you're willing to help with that, can we have a sign-up sheet in the back somewhere that people can put their information on?
How about we just send everybody an email that is
Okay.
here, and then
We'll send
If you
everybody.
sign- make
who's
sure you
here
sign in.
tonight,
Make sure you
we will
sign in.
Send y'all an email, and then we'll start.
yeah,
We want to do
we'll just
it.
send them all the
Yeah,
information.
and you'll have patriots from other parishes coming, I can assure you. And we have a technique that's being tested in a few other states called stratified cluster sampling. And it allows you to knock on fewer doors, but still be able to statistically extrapolate to the whole parish. And so I would recommend that we use that, because then you'll get more bang for the buck. And let me say this, our volunteers, the patriots that canvassed, the 55 folks, they were treated so well by folks who answered the door. Everybody except for the mayor of Donaldsonville and one guy who had some big dogs and looked like something going on in his place, maybe marijuana growing or something, I don't know. Everybody had a great experience. It was very encouraging, and it makes you feel like you're doing something. And you are, because you can go to your registrar and demand that they do their job. And we need to get them out of early voting and have them focus on the voter roll. Next question. Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor.
I moved here about 15 months ago from Washington State. And one of the reasons I moved was election fraud is so bad, and I was involved in investigating. Why are you dealing with those people?
Because they called me up and they asked me about that Cajun clothesline. I just sent them the whole, we have video of the whole thing. And they're doing some very good work, and we're sharing ideas. They're 100% mail-in ballots, you know all the problems up there. And so we encourage each other, you know. So.
The other thing is, we looked at the Dominion machines, at the schematics, and every Dominion machine has at least one voter that will communicate outside the machine. So are you dealing with that?
We're not really, we think, this is going to sound a little bit odd, but we think that we're, well, let me say this. I'm more and more convinced that what we're going to learn in the very near future, what do I mean within the next 6 months, we're going to learn that the software in these systems is a product of the U.S. intelligence community. And that it has been tested in Venezuela first, and starting in 2002. It's been used and tested around the world. Recently in 2014 in Ukraine to overthrow that government, the Poroshenko government. And I believe that software is going to come out, that our government has created the software that they use in other places. They're now using it on us. Just my opinion based on my research.
I guess my comment is, as bad as it is here, it's not as bad
And-
anywhere else in the country.
And what he's saying is, as bad as it is here, it's not as bad as Washington State and other places. We have some pretty good things going on in Louisiana with small precincts, so on and so forth. So I want you to be encouraged. I'm very encouraged by what's happening and all the information coming out. Somebody back here got one.
Randy?
Yeah, Bo?
I want to ask a question moving forward, because we know that there's some problems, but I'm kind of looking a little bit further down the road. But let's say some states want to have a constitutional convention, and I agree there needs to be some changes. I think the governorship in Louisiana is way too powerful, and it just needs to make some changes. However, let's imagine for a second we're going to vote on some U.S. constitutional amendments, whether it's from a state point or a national point of view, and the feds want us to vote on the Second Amendment. Y'all want the Second Amendment? Hey, nobody wants it. The votes fail. That's kind of where I see things going in a sense where if we don't do something, if we don't start getting traction, that's kind of where your rights are going, down the toilet. So I thank Dr. Russell being here, but I mean, it just dawns on me that if we have to start, quote, voting on things in the country and it's rigged, I mean, what do we have? Especially in our Second Amendment rights, which are dear to me.
Yeah, you know, make no mistake that the Jeff Landry, Eric Schmidt lawsuit and the fact that Tony Fauci was deposed, I didn't mention that Jen Easterly, the CISA director, is up for deposition, the election person. That's coming. That is, to use the president's term, huge. Huge, it's huge. Okay? We have the department heads of all the agencies I mentioned, federal agencies, who are up for deposition. And the court is in Monroe, Louisiana. We also have filed FOIAs. We also are in communication with the folks that are getting the Twitter files. John just communicated with one of them yesterday, and we specifically asked them to look in the Twitter files for Louisiana officials and Louisiana issues in the Twitter files. So we do not give up. We're not giving up. And the information that has come out so far is very damaging. Just think about the chart that I showed you about our Secretary of State. And we're just getting started on that investigation. So be encouraged that you have people, some of whom are in this room, and many who are out of this room and around the country who are working on this with you and on your behalf. Any other questions?
I got a question.
Sure.
How do you protect yourself from Dominion? You
Me?
know, they got massive lawsuits going against all these organizations around the country.
I'm gonna go over here.
How are you avoiding being sued
Me?
for what you're doing today? How are you keeping, what's your defense against that?
Do I worry about it? I serve the risen Lord. I'm ready to go at any time.
It's a tough guy.
We fight against powers and principalities, not against people in this world. My dad fought in the Pacific. He was in the Army before World War II. And he went in March of '41. He was shipped to the Pacific immediately after Pearl Harbor. He was in artillery. And he came back in 1943, married my mom, went into Omaha Beach in Europe shortly after D-Day, fought all the way to within 50 miles of Berlin. And my family has been in this country. They fled, my ancestors fled England because they were under religious persecution in the 1630s and came to Massachusetts. And so my family's been in this country for 400 years. And so I do this to protect fellow citizens and my children and my grandchildren.
But you're open. You're open to that stuff right now.
So here's a funny story.
We know they've shut down a lot of people.
Yeah.
They tie you up in court, tie up all your money. So how do you, there's no way to defend that?
What choice do I have?
Well, I certainly
What
appreciate
choice
what
do
you're
I
doing.
have?
But it's
If some of us don't do this, we pledge our lives, our fortunes,
Amen.
and our sacred honor. John and I have. You know, we don't have a choice. I don't think I have one, but let me tell you a funny story. This is how we deal with it. I think you may recall that a month or so ago, the feds, the FBI stopped Mike Lindell at a fast food joint in southern Minnesota and took his phone. Well, my number and John's number are in Mike Lindell's phone. So when we heard that, the next morning, John texted Mike's phone with the Holy Mystery Rosary and a message, hey guys, I just wanted to encourage you to get to know the Lord. And then they went after Doug Frank. You saw his work here. They stopped Doug Frank in an airport, and they got Doug Frank's phone. Well, our numbers are in Doug Frank's phone. So when we heard that, John gets on his phone. We know that the FBI has it. They know who we are. They know who I am. They haven't contacted me. If they contact me, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm going to cooperate. If they want my phone, I'm going to give it to them. So John texts Frank's phone, hey guys, good morning. Here's the Holy Mystery Rosary. Hope you get to know Jesus. Now, remember, we're fighting against powers and principalities. And we covet your prayers for our protection, because this could be, might be, is going to be a very dangerous game. But, I have to do what my dad did and fight against, he fought against the Nazis. We're fighting against the Glotzies. It's the same fight against the same people. It's just a different decade. And so I appreciate your question. And again, all of us that are working in this area, we need your prayers. We appreciate it. Other questions? Okay then. Thank you so much for coming out. We appreciate it.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Randy. That's amazing. Could you just say all that one more time?
I need you to remind me of acronyms.
Yeah, acronyms. We need you all to be sure you have signed in tonight on your phone, or if you don't have a phone where you can sign in, we do have a paper sheet. I need my guys to line up back there, Jackie and all you ladies, so that anybody that needs help fully signing in, they can do that with you guys on their way out. Okie dokie. Very important. And then that way we know we can send you emails regarding the information from tonight and possibly volunteering for canvassing as time goes on. Also, we still do need to vote on Saturday.
Yes.
So there is an election, and some of you will be voting on a runoff for school board. Very important that you take a look at that. I'm sorry, I don't remember the district right now, but you'll know. There's only one district with a school board runoff. And if you see that on your ballot, you take a look at that. And then, if you would not mind staying behind, we need help cleaning up. Miss Carrie is so gracious to let us use the studio, but we need to put all the chairs back and put everything in place. So we just depend on our people that come to help us volunteer for that. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to the next thing.